The RPG Assassin's Creed have gotten a lot of criticism over the years from the core fan base that kind of fell in love with the original Assassin's Creed games, and I, in big part, have criticized a lot of the things about the RPG Creeds. I think that they do fundamentally misunderstand what it is to be an Assassin's Creed game, particularly Odyssey and Valhalla, and I think that Ubisoft did make a mistake by leaning too much into the RPG traits, or should I say, the wrong RPG traits. But what I want to do in this video is kind of play the devil's advocate and talk about a few things that I think the RPG Assassin's Creed did really well, that if they were to be implemented into the old formula would yield an even better experience than we've ever had before. The one very niche mechanic that I want to focus on in this video is the idea of roaming bosses. This has been done in many games before. Ubisoft did not pioneer this with Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Origins, but it is something that feels so true to the Assassin experience in a way that I would have never come up with by myself if I was designing my dream game, as all of us fans like to do. Basically, once you get to a certain wanted level by, killing a lot of people or being a bit of a nuisance in general to the opposition, you start being hunted by some sort of mercenary. Now, they have different names in the different games, but they all perform the same basic function. They spawn in near you, whether you're in a restricted area or a populated area, and essentially start looking for you, trying to hunt you down. And if you ever come into their line of sight, they attack you and become some of the most formidable opponents that you can have in this game. For the standards of Assassin's Creed, and I do agree and understand that Assassin's Creed in general is a pretty easy game. These games aren't targeted towards the hardcore players. I'm not a good video game player. For casual players, these bosses are really challenging and pose an almost guaranteed death scenario. Unless you've really upgraded your player character, unless you've really understood the mechanics of fighting, it's a little bit of an uphill battle, and a battle that you're most likely going to lose. And I talked about this in a video where I basically discussed how permadeath belongs in Assassin's Creed, and you can watch that video linked right now. But the idea of having something that is a true threat during your player experience is something that bolsters the assassin fantasy to the nth degree. And I've got a very short story to tell you about this that I think a lot of you can relate to. I remember I was infiltrating this enormous 3-star fort with Bayek early into the release cycle of AC Origins. I remember being absolutely enamored still by that game. I mean, I still am to this day, but back then I was in a serious honeymoon phase, and I was feeling immersed in a way that I really hadn't since when I first played Unity. I remember crawling around the corners, trying to not be caught by guards and killing them silently, disposing of their bodies to not have any investigations trigger any unwanted guard patterns. And I remember thinking, God, I'm really in a serious groove. I've been playing this game for hours on end, for months on end, and I really think I've mastered the mechanics of being an assassin. Little did I know that my wanted level was high enough to warrant one of these mercenaries to come investigate. Now, bear in mind, I was in a very high level, very large fort with a lot of enemies that could kill me very quickly. And I was trying to complete a mission, I think it was a side objective, without being detected. I kind of self-imposed on myself that I didn't want to be detected. And to have my state of flow completely shattered by this roaming mercenary that doesn't exactly know where I am, but is definitely looking in the right places, was such a tense, petrifying, and amazing moment that I remember to this day. And petrifying is probably the most accurate word for what I felt, because once you're in this kind of groove, feeling like an unstoppable assassin, once you feel like basically bullying these guards as you make your way through a fort, and you find a true adversary has entered the arena, it's an absolutely remarkable experience. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of you have probably felt this just by the nature of playing the games, but maybe you haven't really stopped to think about how amazing it feels, or maybe you just don't agree. But I want you to indulge me in kind of nerding out about how awesome this feeling was. For me, narratively and gameplay wise, whenever I consume any sort of media, especially in video games talking about gameplay, the most engaging structures are when there are 3 interweaving conflicting parties. It becomes so much more tense, the stakes become so much higher, and the sense of urgency and danger that I feel in when I thought, 5 seconds ago that I was in complete control, is exactly the kind of entertainment and immersion that you want from a game like this. A game where the whole marketing angle is the amount of freedom and role-playing capabilities you're given. Well, I really do feel like I'm role-playing as an assassin if, in the middle of my shit, I start getting looked for by this hulking, dangerous mercenary that could kill me in a one fell swoop if they ever engaged in a battle with me. And this is something that, regardless of the direction that Assassin's Creed takes in the future, I would love to see embedded into basically every AC. Especially every AC that has a very large open world. But Mirage also has these wandering mercenaries, and it's created the same moments of tension and petrification that I described in Origins and that I felt in Odyssey. The reason why I think that this works so beautifully and would actually work in the old games as well is because you are too powerful as an assassin. And the problem with being too powerful as an assassin, and this kind of links to a criticism people have of the games, which is that the games are too easy. It's very difficult to increase difficulty without creating player frustration. You're supposed to feel like you are the most powerful person in the room. You're supposed to feel like you're on the verge of superhuman capability. You're supposed to feel like gathering all this knowledge before an attack gives you such an advantage that these guards never even stood a chance. And one of the most sustainable ways I've seen that Ubisoft has increased difficulty is not through level gating, which just breaks immersion. It's not through adding 8 feet tall guards to the RPG games who could kill you in one fell swoop and you can't one-shot assassinate no matter how much you upgrade your character. It's actually these roaming bosses that basically add a moving landmine to your state of flow sequences when you're targeting a fort. Because if you have some pre-planned path where you're going to slowly and systematically cleave through a bunch of enemies in a fort, and then something comes so disruptive, so dangerous that you actually have to forge and improvise a new path around that target, or else you're going to have to engage in open combat and break your stealth, is the perfect way that you can actually make an Assassin's Creed game harder without creating spongy enemies or shitty level gates or a weak hidden blade that doesn't actually kill someone when you stab them in the neck. Now think of this further in a stealth context, which is the way I prefer to play Assassin's Creed games, and it's the way that I recommend all of you play Assassin's Creed games. Yes, they are challenging opponents, and yes, even if you face them head on, it's a difficult fight and a challenging fight, and dare I say sometimes entertaining when you don't feel like you're just hitting an outdated dry sponge. When you're looking at it in terms of a stealth context, and this is why I want to bring up AC Mirage, this is the perfect way, in my opinion, for a stealth-based Assassin's Creed experience to increase its difficulty by adding random, unknowable, dangerous variables that force you to improvise as you move along a certain level. One thing that I would love is not just to have these in the open world through raising your wanted level, but actually I would love to see them inside of missions. There's this one particular mission in AC Mirage where you're basically breaking into a prison to release a prisoner. It's pretty early on in the game, so I don't think I'm spoiling anything, but it's a wonderful mission, very well paced, very well designed, and the sound design, the guard placements, the tempo of your movement creates a beautiful cinematic tension that permeates throughout the entire mission until the end. It's a very memorable mission that was the kind of moment when I thought to myself, damn, I really do love this game the first time I played it. In these sort of missions, having a roaming boss is a very interesting addition that I would like to see Ubisoft entertain, and if they don't, at the very least, I would love them to keep on implementing this idea of the mercenary, the roaming boss, the unknown variable in a game that very usually rewards you a little too much for making sure that you know everything beforehand in terms of the tools you have, the layout of the place you're infiltrating. The more you know, the more unbalanced it becomes. And of course, you should always reward the player for acting like an assassin. If the more assassin things you do, the easier the game becomes. I think that's a very good thing, and I think that's a very good game design for an Assassin's Creed game. But at the highest level, you end up desiring a little more, a little something, a little unknown that actually makes you be a true assassin by having to improvise and not just kind of game the system every time. And I think that the perfect thing that Ubisoft has added are these mercenaries. I think it's one of the best things that the RPG creeds have implemented, and I really hope that regardless of the direction AC takes, we always do have these roaming bosses kind of like hunt you down while you're in stealth mode. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about that, and if you are interested in watching the video I mentioned before about how permadeath is something that belongs in Assassin's Creed in terms of immersion factor, you can watch this video now.